At the Operational Services Division, we are experts in more than just procurement. Our agency includes many different business functions, including the Office of Vehicle Management and Commonwealth Print and Mail Services. Today, we are taking a closer look at a unit that plays an important role in supporting services for Massachusetts youth, the Special Education Pricing Unit. You are listening to WOSD News Procurement Insights. I'm your host, Layla Palmer. In this episode, we are joined by Jacqui Brown, Director of the Special Education Pricing Unit at OSD. She will give us an overview of the unit and explain how it supports Massachusetts students with specialized needs through pricing, collaboration, and responsible public spending. Welcome, Jacqui. I'm so happy to have you here with us and to talk all about your unit, the Special Education Pricing Unit. So to start, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and then give us a little bit of an overview of the unit and what you all do.
Okay, so I am Jacqui Brown, and I'm the Director of Special Education Pricing and Financial Auditing. And special education pricing serves the children that go to the public schools that maybe the public schools don't actually meet their needs. They have needs beyond those services, so they have to go out of district. So that's where OSD comes in, and we set tuition prices for special education. We also price other items like one-to-one aids, PT, occupational therapy, additional services that aren't included in the approved tuition.
Well, that sounds like really great work. And I'm just curious because OSD, we're known as the state procurement office, but this is such an interesting function of what we do. So is there a particular reason why this unit is within OSD, or can you connect it to some of the other business functions we have that connect to the bigger picture of what we do?
So I think special education pricing is put at OSD so it can be separated from other agencies kind of independently. But the special education schools do use statewide contracts to, get better services, better equipment. As you know,
The plethora of
Yes.
things available in a very streamlined way, I'm sure, for these programs as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. So you talked a little bit about the additional services that the Special Education Pricing Unit prices, like one-to-one aids, that sort of thing. These specialized services. Why is that so important?
Special education is really important because it really changes children's lives. Sometimes the kids have additional needs, like, for example, some of the schools, they focus on different aspects, like school for the deaf or school for the blind. So, and these are services that aren't actually part of the public education. So it's important that those children also receive the same education that someone who didn't have those disabilities.
Interagency collaboration is something OSD does best, and the SPED unit is no exception. Jacqui works hand in hand with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, to set tuition and service pricing for approved special education schools. Let's head back to Jacqui to learn more.
We work with DESE. What DESE does is they actually review the schools for programmatic pieces. So they see, do the schools meet their staffing? Do they have the number of staffing to the number of students? And do they go with all their regulations? And then once they approve the program piece, they send that to OSD. So what we do is I actually look at the program, the school, and I look at the uniform financial reports. I look at all their revenue, their expenses, and then they'll actually send us a budget with DESE's approval. And I go through the budget with all the actual expenses. So I will reach out to the school and say, you have to provide all these documents to support the budget.
How do some of the expenses differ? Are there things that you see with special education schools that are very common for those types of programs that maybe you wouldn't see in a more traditional education program?
Yes, so the expenses are different compared to a regular public school, where, for example, a school for the deaf has an alarm system that is totally different than a regular public school because they can't hear it.
Of course. Wow, yeah.
So you really have to take into consideration the needs of the students. And every school has different students with different needs. So every budget is different.
Now that we understand the many factors involved in setting tuition prices for special education programs, let's learn how Jacqui brings context to the numbers on paper by visiting schools and seeing these expenses in action.
Site visits are one of my favorite because you actually see the students and what the school does for them. So when I get a budget, sometimes the equipment can be expensive. And you're like, well, what does this machine actually do? Because, you just see a dollar amount and what a machine is, but it doesn't actually say what it does. So, for example, I went on a site visit and it was a student who couldn't talk. And could not move like their upper body, but with their eyes, they could actually talk with the machine. So the machine talked for them. And the girl told me about, how she was going to the prom, she picked out a dress, she got her hair done, and without that machine, she would not been able to talk. And without that site visit, I wouldn't have known how much of an impact that actual piece of equipment is. And then I think site visits also help me do my job and help explain things on how they're priced or why they're priced, like one-to-one aids. So sometimes one-to-one aid is longer than the school day. So say the school day is 6 hours and the aid is 7 hours. And I've had, like public schools ask me, why are we paying for an aid for 7 hours when the student's only in there for 6 hours? And I was able to see, because I went on site visits and I seen that a student required a 2-to-1 aid. So this particular school, the student had 2 aides because the student could not be left alone. And every day the aides have to report on the status of the student, like what the student did all day and, the progress. And they can't do that while the student's there.
Right.
So that when the student leaves, they have to go and type everything up. So, but I was able to see that because I went on the site visit. So site visits are huge because they really open my eyes to the needs of the school. And like the equipment, I've gone to some schools where like the staff has to have equipment and other expenses come into that. So.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense that, when you just look at the balance sheet, you can have all these things.
Yes.
What do they mean?
Yeah.
And definitely doing those site visits puts it into perspective.
Yep.
So, what kinds of trends are you seeing in the needs of students that are placed in these approved special education programs, and how do you adapt to those changing needs?
So when the school's needs change, what they do is they come in for a price adjustment. So they would go through DESE first, and DESE would see if the needs are actually validated. Maybe they need more staff. So DESE has to, by their standards, they see if staff is actually required. They do hold a purchases meeting. They talk about why the needs have changed or why there's a need for a change. And I've seen this year that there's been a number of changes in mental health, medical needs. So when that happens, they have to change their staffing, add staffing. So they would go through DESE. DESE would approve it. They would send it to me, and I would review it and review the documents as it is needed.
Yeah, so a lot of collaboration between agencies.
I think we work well together, and I think it's important to keep the programmatic needs and the financial needs separate because they deal with the programmatic needs like the staffing. They approve the licensing of the school. They do all that because that's out of our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That's DESE, and I'm grateful for them to do that. I think the special education schools and the districts work well together to make sure that the students receive the proper education and needs that they need. And I think it's an important piece because, like I said, some of these things change the child's life so much. So it's a great thing.
This concludes today's episode on OSD's Special Education Pricing Unit. Thank you to Jacqui Brown for joining us today. To learn more, visit the Operational Services Division homepage on mass.gov and navigate to the Working With Us tab. There, you will find information about the other business units within OSD, including local government purchasing, financial auditing, and, of course, special education pricing. Visit the OSD YouTube channel for more informative content, including training videos, webinars, and podcasts, with new episodes released each month. Be sure to subscribe and check back for future episodes, highlighting the people, programs, and policies shaping public procurement in Massachusetts. This podcast was produced, engineered, and edited by me, Layla Palmer. Thank you for joining us.